Somewhere in America right now, a guy is standing in front of a snack machine in an office break room, doing math in his head. 40 bags of chips a week, $1.50 profit each, times 12 machines. He's not thinking about restocking or fuel, or the guy who sold him the route. He's thinking about the check that shows up whether he's asleep, on vacation, or dead. That's the pitch. Buy the machine, find the wall, walk away. It's the closest thing capitalism has to owning a fruit tree. You plant it once, and then you just collect. Except almost nobody who buys a root ends up collecting. They end up driving. Here's the part nobody selling you a root wants you to notice. The machine isn't the business. The root is. And a root isn't a fruit tree. It's a delivery job you paid to hire yourself for. So what does it actually cost to get in? If you want to start from zero, a new machine runs you $3,000 to $6,000. Brand new, under warranty, nobody else's gum stuck to the coin slot. The catch is you're starting from zero in every sense. No location, no customers, no history. You have to go find a wall willing to have you, which is its own unpaid, uncertain job before the passive part even begins. Buy used instead, and you can get in for $1,200 to $3,000. Cheaper, but now you're inheriting somebody else's maintenance problems sight unseen. Then there's the option that sounds the smartest on paper. Skip the startup phase entirely and buy an existing route. Machines, locations, and a customer base all on day one. Routes are typically priced as a multiple of the seller's claimed annual net profit, which sounds like a clean, business-like way to price a business. It is right up until you ask the obvious follow-up question. A multiple of whose numbers? And then there's the version built for people who don't want to think about any of this, the bundled business opportunity. Machines, initial candy, help finding locations, training, ongoing support, all wrapped into a single check. Vendstar sold exactly this pitch to thousands of people, and the typical buyer handed over about $10,000 for it. On paper, every version of this looks like the same clean trade. Money in, income out, no boss, no storefront, no payroll. That's what makes it so seductive. You're not buying inventory or square footage. You're buying a cash flow, one that seems to run itself. No employees to manage, no lease to sign. Machines don't call in sick, don't unionize, don't need health insurance. They just sit there, quietly working, 24 hours a day, including Christmas. It genuinely is one of the lowest overhead businesses a normal person can buy into. That part isn't the lie. The lie, or at least the part nobody puts in the brochure, is what buying in actually requires you to trust. With a franchise, you're trusting a disclosure document the government makes them show you. With a vending route, in most cases you're trusting a spreadsheet, one that the seller wrote, about a business that runs almost entirely in cash. That's the price of entry. Not just the check you write, the story you're agreeing to believe. Let's talk about what actually lands in your pocket, because it is not the number on the front of the machine. Start with the top line. A single vending machine, decently placed, generates somewhere between $100 and $1,500 a month in gross sales. That's an enormous range for one metric, and the range itself is the first lesson. Location isn't a factor in vending, it's the factor. Industry estimates put location quality behind 70 to 80% of a machine's total revenue. Everything else, your product mix, your pricing, your restocking schedule, is fighting over the remaining scraps. A machine in a dead lobby with 3 people walking past it a day might clear $50 to $150 a month. A machine bolted to the break room wall of a 24-hour distribution warehouse, next to workers who can't leave the building for lunch, can pull $800 to $1,500. Same box, same candy bars, 10 times the outcome. That's not a rounding error. That's the entire business, decided before you ever load a single bag of chips. Now subtract what it actually costs to run that box. Product cost eats 30 to 50% of every sale. That's the chips, the soda, the candy, the thing customers think they're paying for, and the smallest lever you actually control. Then the location itself takes a cut. 5 to 15% of gross sales goes back to whoever owns the wall you're plugged into, because nobody lets you park a cash register in their building for free. Add cashless processing. Swipe and tap fees now run 2 to 6% per transaction. And since over 70% of vending sales are cashless in 2026, that's not an occasional cost anymore. It's baked into nearly every sale you make. Then there's fuel, there's your own time behind the wheel, and there's a maintenance reserve for the day a bill validator jams or a compressor dies. Because it will. Stack all of that up, and the number that survives, the actual net margin, usually lands somewhere between 15 and 30%. Not the $60,000 to $80,000 a year some sales pitches promise on a $10,000 buy-in, 15 to 30% of a few $100s a month per machine. Here's where the math either becomes a real business or a very expensive hobby. Scale, and specifically density. One machine, even a good one, is not a business, it's a hobby with a receipt. 10 machines run well might net you $500 to $1,200 a month combined. 25 machines run very well, with tight routing and real-time inventory data instead of guesswork, can reach $1,200 to $3,000 a month. Read that gap again. Going from 10 machines to 25 doesn't triple your income because you tripled your machines. It triples your income because you tripled your route efficiency. The same driving loop, hitting more stops, wasting less gas per dollar collected. And that's the layer almost nobody prices in when they're standing in front of a spreadsheet deciding whether to buy a route. Fuel, driving time, and maintenance together can consume something close to 40% of revenue if your routing is sloppy. If your 12 machines are scattered across a metro area, instead of clustered along one tight loop. One well-run operator in Arkansas cut service visits by 15% and improved route efficiency by 140%, purely by switching from a fixed weekly schedule to servicing machines based on actual sales data instead of a calendar guess. Same machines, same locations, almost double the efficiency, just from refusing to drive somewhere that didn't need him yet. Which brings us to a number that should sit uncomfortably with anyone picturing themselves as a vending mogul. Across the entire industry, 52% of operators control just 7.4% of total sales. Read that again. More than half the people in this business are splitting less than 1/10 of the money. The other 90% plus of industry revenue is concentrated in a much smaller group of operators who cracked the density problem. The ones running tight geographic clusters, not scattered machines across 3 counties. That's the honest shape of the revenue. It's real. People do make money doing this. But the money was never really coming from the vending machine sitting quietly in a hallway, generating passive income while you slept. It was coming from route density, service timing, and how tightly you could cluster your stops. Which is to say, it was coming from logistics. The machine just happens to be the part you can see. So here's the actual trap, and it isn't overhead, and it isn't hard work. Plenty of businesses have thin margins and long hours and still make sense. The trap in vending is more specific than that, and it lives in exactly one place: the moment you try to buy in. Think about what you're actually purchasing when you buy an existing route. You're not buying a machine, you already know what a machine costs, new or used, and that number is easy to verify. You're buying a claim that this specific wall, in this specific building, generates this specific amount of cash, month after month, and that claim is almost impossible to check before you own it. Why? Because vending is one of the last genuinely cash-heavy retail businesses left in America. Even now, even with card readers creeping into most machines. Every dollar that goes into a coin slot leaves no bank statement, no merchant processor record, no third-party paper trail. The only proof that a machine made $400 last month is whatever number the seller decides to write down. There's no landlord's rent roll to subpoena, no franchisor's audited disclosure document, no public sales tax filing that breaks it out machine by machine. The entire value of the thing you're buying rests on a spreadsheet that one person built, alone with every incentive in the world to make it look better than it is. Compare that to almost any other small business you could buy. A laundromat has utility bills that scale with usage, hard to fake. A car wash has payment processor statements. Even a franchise, for all its other problems, comes with a legally mandated disclosure document the government forces the seller to hand over. Vending has none of that scaffolding. It's a business built to run quietly in cash, machine by machine, precisely the conditions under which a fabricated profit history is not just possible, but nearly undetectable, until you're the one driving the route and discovering the real number. This is why the industry keeps producing the same story in different cities, decade after decade. Not because vending itself is a scam. Plenty of operators run it straight and make real money. But because the sale of a route is structurally the easiest kind of small business fraud to commit and the hardest for a buyer to catch in time. A seller doesn't need to lie about the machines. The machines are real, sitting right there, easy to inspect. They just need to lie about what those machines produced last year. And there's no independent witness in the room to call them on it. And here's the quieter version of the same trap, playing out even without any fraud at all. The passivity you were promised assumes someone else already solved the density problem for you. Clustered locations, efficient routing, service timing tuned to real demand. If you inherit a route that was never actually clustered well, nothing about it improves just because you now own the paperwork. You've bought someone else's inefficiency along with their machines, and the only way to fix it is to become the very unpassive thing you were trying to avoid. A full-time logistics planner, rerouting your own stops from scratch. So the mechanism isn't that vending machines don't make money. Some do genuinely, reliably. The mechanism is that the product being sold to new buyers, a documented, verifiable passive income stream, often doesn't exist in the form it's being sold in, because the industry has no built-in way to prove it does. You're not buying a business. You're buying somebody's word about a business, in the one retail category left where their word is almost impossible to check. That gap between what a route claims to be worth and what anyone can actually verify before the money changes hands is where the entire passive income promise quietly comes apart. If you want to see this mechanism in its purest form, you don't have to imagine it. It has a name and a paper trail and a federal case number. For most of the 2000s, a company called Multivend LLC, doing business as Vendstar, ran what looked, from the outside, like a normal small business opportunity. Bulk candy vending machines. The kind you've seen in a laundromat entryway or a gas station corner. The twist knob machines full of gumballs and jawbreakers. Vendstar's pitch was simple and specific. Buy the machines and they'd hand you everything else. Candy to fill them. Help finding locations, training, ongoing support. The full ecosystem, no experience required. The typical buyer paid around $10,000 to get in. Here's the number that should stop you. During its last 5 years in business, Vendstar did more than $60 million in sales. Not $60 million of candy sold through machines. $60 million collected from people buying into the business opportunity itself. That's the tell. The company's real product was never candy. It was the sale of the dream to the next buyer in line. The telemarketing scripts, according to federal prosecutors, had sales reps personally claiming to run their own profitable vending routes. Reps who, in many cases, had never operated a single machine. The locating companies Vendstar recommended to help buyers find spots for their machines had no particular skill at finding good locations. They placed machines wherever a business owner would tolerate one, sometimes without even getting real consent. And those machines were frequently pulled within weeks by owners who never wanted them there to begin with. The result: buyers received the machines. That part was real. Almost everything else, the profits, the support, the locations, either didn't materialize or didn't hold up. Vendstar closed its doors in July of 2010. 6 years later, in 2016, 6 of the people behind it were convicted on federal fraud charges. Several victims testified at trial about what the losses did to their families. Retirement savings gone. For a business that was never going to work the way it was sold. That's the $10,000 version, at national scale. Now look at the same trap running quietly at neighborhood scale. A decade later, and 800 miles north. In Taunton, Massachusetts, a man named Kevin Lennon ran a vending company called KBL Inc. Rather than operating machines himself at scale, Lennon's business model leaned on something narrower and more personal. Selling existing routes, machines already placed, already generating some income, to individual buyers who wanted a small, established business of their own. According to Massachusetts prosecutors, Lennon handed at least 2 of those buyers fabricated spreadsheets. Documented histories of past profits at the locations they were about to buy, numbers that didn't reflect reality, total losses across his victims, roughly $187,500. But the most telling detail isn't the fake spreadsheet. It's what happened to a third victim. That buyer, dissatisfied with how the route was performing, asked Lennon to help resell it, to find a new buyer and pass along the proceeds. Lennon found a buyer. He sold the route, and then he kept the money for himself. Sit with that for a second. The same route, sold twice to two different people who each believed they were buying a documented income stream. And the only person who ever actually got paid twice was the man who never operated a single machine on it. Same mechanism as Vendstar, just scaled down to a size where it's easy to miss. A business built on cash flow, nobody outside the seller can verify, sold to buyers who have no independent way to check the story before they've already written the check. So who actually wins in this business? Not usually the person standing in the break room doing math about quarters. The real winners are the ones positioned at the sale itself. The locating companies who get paid whether or not a location ever produces a dollar. The business opportunity packagers who collect their $10,000 on day one, regardless of what happens on day two. The route brokers who take their cut on the transaction, not the outcome. In a business where the sale is easier to profit from than the operation, the incentive gravity points towards selling routes, not running them. That's not a conspiracy. It's just where the money is safest. That doesn't mean vending is a lie. Top to bottom, run it right and it's real. An operator who clusters locations tightly, times restocking to actual demand instead of a fixed calendar, and, critically, verifies a route's numbers independently before buying in, can land in that 15 to 30% net margin range. Quarter after quarter, no fabricated spreadsheet required. That version of the business exists. It's just smaller, less glamorous, and far less thrilling to advertise than buy a machine, retire in a year. The worst case is the one Vendstar's victims and Kevin Lennon's buyers lived through. Money handed over for a documented income stream that was never real, discovered only after the check cleared and the machine was already theirs. At that point, the passive income doesn't evaporate, transforms into driving, into restocking, into slowly discovering that you didn't buy a business. You bought a job, and you paid for the privilege of finding that out yourself, which is really the whole story, underneath the candy and the coin slots. Vending machines don't lie, spreadsheets do. And the industry keeps selling the same machine twice, once as a box that dispenses snacks, and once to the next buyer down the line as a box that dispenses passive income. Only one of those two products has ever actually existed.